Wednesday, I posted on Facebook saying that the current violence in Israel highlights the division between old school liberals and today's hard left progressives. Basically, the divide that Joe Biden has been trying to close with all of his pandering toward the Squad and company. But in recent days, he's come under attack by the likes of Rashida Tlaib for not being angry enough at Israel. Yesterday in the New York Times, there was an in-depth look at an even more internal division. This is the split that divides American Jews against themselves and against their fellow liberals should they not condemn Israel. As you know, I subscribe to the New York Times so that you don't have to. I'll put the whole article in as a slideshow at the very end of this video if you want to read it. But first, I want to flash back to a video I made for Facebook in 2018. It's a quick one.
I've moved around the Los Angeles arts world for decades. There are plenty of Jews here, and most of them are progressives. This has always been the case. 25 years ago, when you saw your Jewish friends at a cocktail party, they would be excited about their upcoming or just completed trip to Israel. There was a palpable pride in that scrappy little country. But that was beginning to change, and gradually my Jewish friends simply stopped talking about Israel. Why? What happened? Well, what happened is the American left turned away from the Jewish state and attached their affections to the so-called Palestinians. And American Jews just shut up and went along with it. Why did the left turn? I'll tell you. Progressives understand the world by a single formula. To them, the entire human story breaks down to this: oppressor versus oppressed. That's it. Their politics is only that idea. Everything that they are driven to do is in response to that one thing. They're really change junkies and control freaks, and oppression is their justification to monkey around with whatever is in place. So, when looking at any problem, they must locate both the oppressor and the oppressed. The math is simple. Who's doing well and who's not doing well? Oppressor, oppressed. Now, at one time, Israel was seen as an underdog, and therefore the oppressed. This enabled the left to root for her. She was made up of hunted peoples who had survived an attempted genocide. What could be better? And early on, Israel was moving toward a socialist model. Meanwhile, in our universities, a radical professor named Howard Zinn was turning U.S. history on its head. What we'd seen as a country of tough, hard-headed pioneers was being recast as an oppressor nation. And the indigenous peoples who were supplanted by our ancestors were cast as the oppressed. Progressives longed to go back in time and rescue those noble primitives from, well, us. But they couldn't go back in time, so they just hated the white man as best they could while wearing stylish French jackets and making dream catchers. And over there in the Middle East, Israel was losing interest in being a socialist communal underdog. They morphed into a nation of badasses. They fought off every attack and in their spare time built the freest, most forward-looking country in the region. And they did it with capitalism and military might. In a sense, they turned into America Junior, a group of advanced Westerners taming a wild frontier. And so, in the minds of progressives, the Palestinians became the indigenous peoples, the First Nation peoples. They became, well, the Indians. This was just what the left was looking for. Cowboys and Indians in real time. Oh, goody. And so the progressives switched sides, and they have hated Israel ever since, in exactly the way and for exactly the reasons they hate America. And gradually, their fantasy-based adoration of Palestinian Arabs spread to Islam in general. This explains why savage tribalism and patriarchy among Muslims does not bother the left. They had already learned to forgive all that in the American Indians who had been subjugated by empire in North America. You notice how lefties always refer to housing developments in the West Bank as settlements? And the brave Israelis who lived there as settlers? Where have we heard that before? But wait a minute. What's wrong with this picture? Oh yeah, the Jews were there first. They were conquered by the Greeks. They were subjugated by the Romans. The dead white guys inventing Western civilization were stealing Jerusalem long before Muhammad ever flew there on his magic horse. Palestine was the Roman province of Palestina, which Emperor Hadrian established in 135 AD to drive the Jews out once and for all. This makes them the indigenous peoples who were displaced by imperialist greed. The Israelis are the Indians. So maybe I need to call some of my Jewish friends and tell them it's okay to stop hating Israel.
Okay, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I was trying to get at the problem of viewing the world through the lens of oppressor and oppressed. If you lionize victims as the only morally pure group, then they will need to stay victims lest they lose the moral high ground. George Floyd's many sins were instantly absolved when he became the sacrificial victim for a fresh generation of social justice warriors. So, too, a terrorist organization called Hamas is given a free pass every time it provokes the police actions of Israel. The Times article is a real eye-opener. The expected bias is on display in the opening paragraphs, but then a lot of nuance emerges. All of the different angles from which the Gaza conflict can be viewed. There is real pain here. Pro-Israel Jews forced to stay silent as their liberal friends call Israel an apartheid state. A rabbi gets calls every day from teenagers trying to negotiate the minefield of social media. Kids just closing down their accounts as the anti-Israel rhetoric heats up. One Jewish woman who was married to an Israeli calls being Jewish in America exhausting and scary. A 30-something guy calls it an identity crisis. Another Jewish woman who joined Black Lives Matter now hears her fellow travelers compare Israel to Nazi Germany. Anti-Jewish hate crimes on the rise and no Donald Trump to blame them on. This is the inevitable result of identity politics. It's a natural survival mechanism for humans to toggle back and forth between absolutes, friend or foe, good or bad. But ours is a complex society, and the inclusiveness of this country has encouraged people to emigrate, marry, and befriend in all directions across multiple tribal lines. We cannot intermingle peacefully and continue to view the world in these rough binaries. It simply can't be done. The need to define social justice in simple victim-victimizer terms eventually divides every group upon itself. It's happening to blacks with the emergence of an intellectual class that is going to war with the white fragility narrative that actually encourages black fragility. And it's happening to Jews as well. Their young people are now overrepresented by both secularism and orthodoxy, Zionism and Palestine can do no wrong-ism. Just as our greater society is being radicalized both to the left and right, those who won't conform to the oppressor-oppressed narrative are forced into a defensive position, and pretty soon we're as dogmatic as our opponents. Right now, American Jews are finding out that there is a Jew-specific cancel culture all warmed up and ready for its rollout. They're such smart people. How could they not have seen this coming? Hitler couldn't wipe them out, but leftism might trick them into doing it themselves. We must choose rational thinking over these black and white narratives, which make for great clickbait and bad everything else. Here's Bill Whittle showing a photograph that demonstrates yet another binary.
Well, I've given it some thought, and the picture you're looking at may not only be the photo of the year, maybe the photo of the decade, might in fact be the photo of the century. This picture of Hamas rockets being launched on the right side and Israeli anti-rocket defense known as Iron Dome rising up on the left side, to me, is more than just a moment in time. It's a moment for time. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your right angle, not so much about the Israeli conflict and the escalation that we're seeing recently, so much as what's actually in this photograph. Let's just look at it again real quick here. On the right-hand side is a return to primitivism, tribalism, and barbarism that as far back as even in the 70s, we thought was really well behind us. On the left side, we see something infinitely more difficult. We see a purely defensive system when the simplest solution would be to simply bomb the people launching the rockets into oblivion. But no, the technological brilliance of this is to be purposely defensive only. And this brings me to the point of this one, gentlemen. In this picture, we see where the 21st century has gone. On one hand, into a world of as I said, a regression, a decivilization, a reprimitivization of rockets and unprovoked attacks and terror tunnels and all the rest. And on the other hand, this incredible sophistication, this incredible technical mastery for defensive purposes, it's the best and the worst of humanity in a nutshell, in one picture.
Exactly. Sophistication or regression, retribalization, and de-civilization. This is one binary we can't ignore. Let's make the right choice between the primitive and the nuanced, right there on the battlefield of our own minds. Let's push ourselves toward a more multi-layered understanding of what our tribe really is, and choose calm, rational clarity over the Manichaean choices we are currently being offered. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.